Hi, welcome back to the Pink Chemist. So today we are going to go through how to write and name a covalent bond as well as writing out a covalent formula. So just a quick note, here I have attached a picture of the periodic table and its labelings. Now in order to have a covalent bond, you must have two nonmetals. All right, so that is very essential. If you look at the periodic table, you will see that our nonmetals are located on the right side of the periodic table. You may need this for your reference if you are struggling with identifying what is a metal and a nonmetal on the periodic table. So here's the periodic table color coded for you. All right, so let's hop right into it. Down below, I have some steps that will help you write out your covalent names. And then at the right hand side, I have the prefixes that is needed in order to write out the covalent compound. Now, we're going to do an example. We're going to start off with CO2. Both carbon and oxygen are considered nonmetals, so that will qualify CO2 as a covalent bond. Now, the first thing that we want to do is determine the type of element that you have. Now, when I look at C here, I know that C is a nonmetal. So since I know that C is a nonmetal, I'm going to write the prefix for the first nonmetal. Now, you're able to write the prefix for your first nonmetal by looking at the number that is located next to that element. So for carbon, there is no subscript next to that element. So the number next to the element is what we call a subscript. I'm actually going to write a little note here. So the subscript is the number located at the bottom of element. All right, so this number helps us to identify how many of that element is present. All right, so when we don't see a number there or a subscript next to the element, we know that that element is basically one. So if I'm gonna do a little star here, so no subscript means that it is one, and we do not write ones as subscripts. Okay, because it is already understood that it is one of that element present just at the site of the element being there. So if the number or the subscript next to that element is one for the first element in a covalent bond, you will not write the prefix, okay, mono. So the prefix for one is mono. So I'm just going to go ahead and write out the name, which is carbon. All right. So then I'm going to go to my second element. And my second element is O, which is oxygen. So I'm going to look at oxygen and I see that the subscript next to oxygen is 2. I'm going to go down here to my prefixes and I see that di is the prefix for 2. So I'm going to write di first. A prefix is what goes before. So it's going to go before the element's name. And then I'm going to write out my element's name. Now, O stands for oxygen. However, for your second nonmetal, you are going to end your second nonmetal in IDE. Your second nonmetal is going to be ended in IDE. So instead of writing dioxygen, I wrote dioxide. Okay? And that's it. That's pretty simple. But let's do another one. Let's do another example. All right? So we have P4S3. All right, so I'm going to go on my periodic table and I'm going to identify um, what element P is. So the element P on the periodic table is phosphorus. And when I look next to it, this number that's next to it, which is called the subscript, is 4. My prefix for 4 is tetra. So I'm going to write tetra first, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and write out phosphorus. So I have tetra phosphorus. And then I'm going to go to my second element. My second element is sulfur, and my subscript next to sulfur is 3, and the prefix for 3 is tri. So I'm going to write that first, and then I'm going to write, instead of writing trisulfur, I'm going to write trisulfide, because the very last step is to attach IDE as a suffix at the end of my second nonmetal. And boom, I'm done. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to how to write out a covalent formula. Now I like to look at writing a covalent formula as like the nickname of an element. It's really not the nickname, but it's kind of like how a dad may name his son as a junior. So you might have Michael Jordan, and then his nickname may be MJ because he's a junior. Okay, so Michael Jordan will be likely until writing out the chemical name, and then the chemical formula will be the nickname, like MJ. I hope that kind of helps because that's kind of how I kind of think about it when it comes to writing the chemical name and then the chemical formula. All right, so when it comes to writing out a chemical formula, I have some notes down here at the bottom that will help assist you. But for time's sake, we're going to just go ahead and get into doing an example based off of what we already have, okay? All right, so we have, let's try dinitrogen, tetra oxide, all right? So this is the example that we have. We have the name dinitrogen tetraoxide, and we want to write out the formula, okay? So in order to write out the formula, first I have to determine the type of element that I have. So I do know that both of these are nonmetals, okay? And then I'm going to write the symbol for the first nonmetal, okay? So outside of the prefix, I see that I have nitrogen, and the symbol for nitrogen on the periodic table is N. So I wrote out the symbol. Next, I'm going to look at my prefix. My prefix in front of nitrogen is di. And when I look at my prefix page, I know that di means 2. So I'm going to write 2 as the subscript. Then I'm going to go to my second element. And my second element is oxide, okay? And I know that oxide is technically oxygen, but when I write out my second nonmetal, I have to end it in IDE. So it's just oxygen. So since it's just oxygen, I'm going to write O. And then tetra, I know that tetra, when I look at my prefix page, I know that tetra means 4. So I have N2O4. Okay. So let's try out another one. All right. So let's try sulfur monofluoride. Right? So trisulfur monofluoride. So I know that sulfur symbol is S, and that tri is 3. And then when I go to my second one, I know that fluoride, which is just fluorine on the periodic table, is F, and mono means 1. But we do not write 1 as a subscript because it is already understood that the presence of that element being there, that it is already one of that element available. Okay? And that is how you write out a chemical formula for a covalent bond. It's pretty easy. It will help if you continue to just do practices and keep replaying this video as much